look out, which of course is English for Achtung, because as you will notice, I'm not joined by Al tonight, who has been unfortunately detained, but I'm here with Katja, who of course is German, and if anyone's going to say Achtung, it should be you, Katja.
Do I have to?
Yes.
Achtung.
Oh, wasn't that brilliant? You just did that so well. You really did.
So willingly.
So welcome everyone. Good evening, and to We Have Ways live stream live from the brilliant National Army Museum. And thank you to Nicola and Dawn. We're going to get Nicola and Dawn down later, who've stayed up specially, keeping the place open. I'm a big fan of this museum, I'm not going to lie. I think it's absolutely terrific. And not least because, of course, they've allowed me to put on a Brothers in Arms exhibition, more of which soon, because we're going to go and have a little look about that. That's just finished at 5 p.m. this afternoon. And we're also joined today for the first time ever, a live audience, the Chosen Nine. It's so exciting. So welcome all, good evening. It's lovely to chat to you earlier. Of course, this being We Have Ways, we've all been stoking ourselves up with Pils and Lager. Pils and Lager. So what is the difference between Pils and Lager?
They're really much of a muchness. So a Pilsener is a type of lager. So there are some lagers which aren't Pilseners, but all Pilseners are lagers.
Okay, fine. So basically, a Pils is a lager.
That's clarified, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's fine. But anyway, so we've been having Pils and Lager, and we've been having wine, and you're all most welcome. Thank you very much for coming, Chosen Nine. Now, anyway, we're talking about the fact that, I'm just not published in Germany. I was going to be Anthony Beevor's published in Germany. Why aren't I published in Germany? And I was sort of sounding really like a sort of petulant child about this. And Margaret Holton, who does the right, she said, yeah, but Germans don't really do Second World War books unless they're sort of geeky books about tanks, or they do kind of really kind of heavyweight stuff. And I went, yeah, but Anthony Beevor's published in Germany, and she said, yeah, well, the problem is that they've sort of now got one. They don't need anyone else because they've got Anthony Beevor. And I said, well, what about Max Hastings? She said, well, they don't publish him. I said, what about Alex Kershaw? Don't publish him. What about Rick Atkinson?
I've struggled with my book, to be honest. It's the same thing. It's right in between of being like, it's not an 800-page tome by Professor so
with 4 billion footnotes.
Exactly. And equally, it isn't a picture book of, helmets and uniforms of the 19th century. So, because it falls in between those two things, there just isn't... I think there'd be a market for it. There's just not the willingness to publish it.
There's not the willingness. This is my point. Okay, so on TV, on the other hand, there's absolutely loads of it. I mean, I can't remember what they call Nazi megastructures over there, but trust me, it's on screen in Germany. And the other thing is, what's it called?
Nazi Megastrukturen. I don't know if it is called, but I just translated it.
That's so brilliant.
I think that could work.
That's really funny. Well, anyway, whatever it's called over there, it's on. And I've done a number of series for ZDF. ZDF's big channel, right?
Yeah. It's kind of like the BBC Two of Germany, I guess.
Well, you can't for love nor money get a program on the Second World War on BBC Two these days, but you can on German telly. So maybe the revolution's about to happen.
Maybe we can push it.
Exactly. Now, the other thing that's very exciting is because we're standing in front of a universal carrier, and actually we've just done a rather daring We Have Ways purchase this week. We have bought not a universal carrier, but a Lloyd carrier, and we've actually bought 1.5. So there were 3 for sale, and one of Tobin's mates, Tobin as in our kind of hardware guru and Cromwell restorer, is called Ben. He's called Ben Hawkins, but his email is Ben Carrier, which I think is pretty smart, I've got to say. Anyway, so I'm going to call him Ben Carrier from now on. But anyway, Ben Carrier has bought 3 Lloyd carriers, which are in a yard somewhere, covered in a barn somewhere near Chichester in Sussex. And one is in really good nick, one is complete, needs restoration, and the other one is complete bits. So we've bought the second one, which is in complete bits, but is complete. And so we've got a guy called Marcus Bailey, who is a guy I know who lives just down the road from me, who is still in his 20s and was sort of stripping down engines before he could actually ride a bike. and he's permanently covered in oil. He's one of those sort of just people who just knows how to deal with engines and gaskets and big ends and what have you. And anyway, so he's going to be overall in charge of restoring it. But we're obviously going to be following the progress of its restoration on We Have Ways. The highs, the lows, the hiccups, the triumphs. And then at the end of it, we're all going to be able to go for a spin in it, which is going to be great. And we're already arguing about what colours it's going to be and what decals. Because obviously, as we were discussing earlier on, Al is going to want to have it in airborne colours. Obviously, I'm going to want to have it in Sherwood Rangers colours. So neither of us are going to get that one. Then Akak, who's in the audience here tonight, is saying, well, I think, King's Own Scottish Borderers, 52nd Lowland Division. Yeah, I'm sort of, I'm with that. I mean, I'd be edging towards 43rd Wessex Division or Tyne Tees, but it's up for grabs, Akak. That's the bottom line. It's up for grabs. But whatever, it's going to look incredibly strong at the end of it, and we're all going to be able to beetle around in it. It's going to be huge fun. Anyway, the main reason for being here in the brilliant National Army Museum, Nicola, is because today we've just completed the Brothers in Arms exhibition, which I might have mentioned before on the podcast and on live streams. And it's finally come together, and a whole host of people have been involved. We've had brilliant Drinkle Dean, who designed it. There's Andrew Whitworth from the D-Day Museum, who's helped me kind of sort of rein me in a little bit. There's a brilliant Jane Holmes, who's sort of the person in-house at the National Army Museum who kind of oversees all the kind of individual exhibitions, and again has been kind of sort of reining me in quite a lot. But the overall effect has been absolutely fantastic. And of course, there's Nicola and Dawn, who kind of do all the marketing and PR. And we've got an amazing week this week, because actually on Saturday, arriving tomorrow, is my friend Jim Clark in his Sherwood Rangers Colours Sherman tank, which is very exciting. So that's actually a Sherman tank coming to Chelsea, which I'm quite looking forward to seeing. But on Saturday, we've got a big open day. We've got David Willey coming up from Bovington. As you know, David likes to talk and likes to chat about tanks. So if anyone wants to chat about tanks with David, he's going to be here on Saturday. The exhibition itself opens on Thursday, the 9th of December, so this Thursday, the day after the start of the Ashes. But tonight we've got this exclusive preview, as you are the first people who will be seeing it, other than those who've actually been involved with it. Come on in, follow me. We've got what we decided to do was, although obviously there's lots and lots of people that are involved in the Sherwood Rangers. Obviously, as in the book, I kind of focused on a cast list of people that you could follow and empathise with. Then we had to kind of sort of grade that down again and just pick out a handful. We chose 8. I was told I was only allowed 6, and I said, no, we've got to have 8. We've really, really got to have 8, because I wanted that representation. I didn't want all the officers, but there's some people who just sort of really, really stood out. So we also then have to kind of work out, what is it we're trying to do here? The takeaways for me were the humanity of the people. I mean, I just think, I just cannot get over, Christmas 1944, the chocolate and sweets for the kids of Shinnon, Stanley Christopherson noticing the snowdrop just outside Cleve, and just the sort of general good humour and love of the ridiculous that they all had. They really were a kind of brothers in arms. It's a cliche, but cliches are cliches because they're true to some extent, and it's certainly the case with the Sherwood Rangers. Then I was really, really struck, I suppose, when I was doing the book, just about the awesome responsibility on the shoulders of the commanders, particularly the kind of troop commanders, squadron commanders, and obviously the people at the top of the regiment. Just they're so young, and they've got so much is expected of them on so many different levels. So that was the other thing I really wanted to get across. Then I also really wanted to get across just what it was like being in a tank and what it was like being the crew. And then also just the absolutely horrific casualties. I mean, 142% casualties. So that's what we're trying to convey in here. So we've got our 8 guides. So it's worth just sort of mentioning them. So obviously Stanley Christopherson, you need a little bit of background about the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry, because I've been banging on about it obviously for ages, ever since I first sort of conceived the book, and you guys have all listened to me and the progress as I've been developing this book. But you need to know that they kind of went off to war in 1939 or early 1940 on horseback, that they finished the kind of single unit with more battle honours than any other. I mean, that's an achievement. I mean, obviously, there's regiments with more battle honours than Durhams, for example, but then there's got lots of battalions. But the Sherwood Rangers are just one unit. So as a single unit, no one's got more battle honours than them. And I think it's 30 and 18 between D-Day and VE Day. So it's a heck of a lot. And the reason they've got these battle honours is because they were fighting all the time. And that's because they're in an independent army brigade. So you've got Stanley Christopherson, obviously, because, you know, I edited his diaries. His son David is one of my greatest mates. And he's just a total legend. I mean, he's just an absolutely remarkable guy. Then you've got George Drew, total ledge. I mean, you know, he was a jockey before the war, a real countryman, and was in the kind of, you know, when they were TA, when they were yeomanry before the war, they're part-time soldiers. Dring was kind of absolutely at the heart of that. And he's the guy that knocks out 5, you know, his tank knocked out 5 German tanks on the 26th of June, 1944, when they're trying to get the Rauray Ridge as part of Operation Marla. And his nephew Martin, and his sister's still alive, lives in Malta, Harry Heenan's sister, and his Harry Heenan's nephew Martin lives in London. And I was really, really touched that they let me look at Harry's letters. And again, they're so profoundly moving because, spoiler alert, he doesn't make it through. He gets killed on the 25th of September, exactly a month after his 21st birthday. And letters, you can see he's this kind of sort of boy man. You know, he's still writing to his parents pretty much every day. You know, I've got a 20-year-old son, so I'm kind of very conscious that he's of a similar sort of age, and that my son is also, you know, he's branching out, he's becoming more independent, he's his own man, but he still loves home, and, you know, he still kind of rings us every other day. And, you know, he hasn't quite completely let go of his kind of youthfulness. And that's what you get in those letters. And suddenly someone, you know, you're reading those words, the flesh is coming back onto the bones of someone who's long dead. And that's a really, really profoundly moving experience. Then Ernie Leopard, I just love Ernie. He's a Cockney. He's well, he's not actually a Cockney. He's a South Londoner. He's from Clapham, and his dad was a plasterer, and after the war he became a plasterer. And he's just a sassy, lovely bloke. Stan Perry, we all know about Stan. You know, we were lucky enough to see him at Warfest Eins. He was a great mate of mine, and his daughter Kat actually gave me his tie, his regimental tie, which is a big thing. So I should be wearing that at the launch on Wednesday evening. Semkin, I'm just completely in awe of John Semkin. You know, 23 years old, commander of A Squadron, and you know, he's very, very bright. And he's very competent, and he's got that authority, even though he looks about 11 in that picture. And I was lucky enough to interview him in 2012 with David Christopherson, and it was such a moving and memorable interview, one of the most memorable that I've ever done, I think, of the sort of 300 plus Second World War veterans. He was obviously completely devastated by his experience still after all these years. And he was incredibly candid and incredibly frank. And it was clear that, you know, his leadership just saved a lot of lives. But I was really struck by the incredible responsibility on his shoulders and how he dealt with it. How would you deal with that at 23? I mean, God, I was useless at 23. I mean, I'm pretty useless now, but I was really totally feckless at 23. I mean, I just cannot imagine doing what he did. Then Skinner, I mean, there are no words that can pay tribute to him and what he did. And again, his humanity, that, you know, he's what we call pastoral care today. He is obviously the chaplain. Most people were Christian, but he's so much more than that. You know, he is a man who is there to talk to be a shoulder to cry on, but also, perhaps more importantly, he's the person who takes responsibility of all the dead. He doesn't want the crew to see any of the dead. He personally oversees the burial of every single one. People like Bill Bartle, you know, he just gone, just disappeared, and it really troubles him. And Stanley Christopherson has to rein him in and go, no, no, you're not. I'm not going to let you go up to the front and find out what's happened to Bill Bartle. And then there's Bill Wharton, who is just, in a way, I kind of feel more affinity to him, I think, than just about anyone else, because his son, Michael, who's coming over this week for the exhibition, which I've never met, but I've talked to extensively, sent me all his father's wartime letters, transcripts of all his wartime letters. And here's the first one here. And they're all typed up, but here you can see the writing of them. And this was written on the 1st of June. 1944, when D-Day hasn't happened. So when that ink is put onto that piece of paper, D-Day hasn't happened. It's about to happen. And he talks about a bit of cloud coming over and the wind in the trees above his tent and, wondering how she is. And his wife's pregnant with their first child and he's worried about that. And it's just, my God, you're just sort of so in the moment. And that's such a privilege to it's also a privilege to be able to touch this letter that was written in a camp, near the Solent just before they were going onto their landing craft. What an amazing thing. And there's the 9 of Hearts that Stanley found in his camp, because they were A squadron, so they weren't in the first wave, so they were in a different camp. And he found that on the ground. He didn't like people wishing him good luck. He sort of thought that was tempting fate, but he wasn't above superstitious. And he found the 9 of Hearts, and he thought, right, I'm going to keep that. This is going to be my 4-leaf clover. And he put it in his breast pocket of his battle dress, and he kept it there for the entire war. And there it is. That's it. That is the 9 of Hearts that he found on that camp in C3 or B2 or whatever it was. I can't remember which one it was. But it's amazing to see these things. So then we move on to life in a tank. But also, I wanted people to be able to touch things. So we've got a pixie suit in a glass cabinet there, but we've also got one you can touch. You can undo the zip, you can put it up, you can feel the thin weave serge on the collar and the hood. You can see where they put all the pens and whatever they had. Pockets galore on this, and it's got this little very fine poplin cotton liner in it. Underneath to stop the sort of water going down your arm. And this pattern here, this is the waterproofing stuff. It sort of stains it. And it feels quite, if you feel there, it feels quite, have a little fondle, but it feels quite scrunchy. But these are good. They're super warm. Yeah. And come sort of, October when they were all issued, they're wearing them all the time. You see them all the time. So then we've got a kind of a montage here of the Sherwood Rangers. And what I wanted to do was sort of show that although we picked on 8 people, actually it is a regiment of hundreds. There's a whole host of different people. So I want to give this flavour of different people. So you've got this whole range, and you can see sort of, the winter, the pixie suits. Here they are in the pixie suits here. You can see them crossing the Rhine. You can see Operation Pepper Pot here. And then you get to the third section, which is, the experience of battle. What's it like being in battle? And again, we wanted to, come on in. We really wanted to we want people to touch this, feel what it's like to touch a battle dress. And although this is a 945 battle dress, I've done it up as John Semkins, with the yellow for Royal Armour Corps. They had yellow pips rather than khaki pips, major, his medals. So we did we put in a few infographics. So the point I really wanted to make is this was a regiment that went to war on horseback. And this is what the regiment would look like. It's a lot of horses, isn't it? 300 horses going on trains down to Marseille and going on a boat to Palestine. And then this is what you've got by 1944. And of course, it's totally transformed. The only continuity is a handful of the personnel, who go all the way through. There's actually quite a lot in the regiment who land on D-Day who were there in 1939 on horseback. And, you look at photographs of them and it's just extraordinary, really. I mean, they just look like as though they're from kind of a different planet, frankly. And there, ladies and gentlemen, is the shell. The 75mm, normally sitting by my desk, now protected by a glass cage. Carefully brought up on the train from Salisbury to Waterloo in my US Army canvas holdall. And you can see on one hand it is, I think this is the other thing that, Al often talks about, this idea that we're kind of, we're 6 months behind where we need to be in terms of technology. And I think when you look at that very obviously looks like a radio, even to someone who's, born in the 21st century. I think most people will recognize that is a radio. On one level, it's incredibly sophisticated. On another level, it's incredibly unsophisticated. And I'm constantly sort of reminded that these are real people like you and I. They have the same thoughts and feelings and emotions, and yet they're dealing in an age where technology has taken this huge leap forward, but it is light years away compared to most of the technology that we use today. No GPS, there's no mobile phones, there's no WhatsApp, there's no video games, there's no COD. It's just a completely different world, and yet there is enough, isn't there? I think from the 1940s to make it still seem kind of within touching distance, and it just is because people are just still alive. So we've got bits of the war diary. We've got this amazing sheet here. This is from Bovington. I found in Bovington, and I realised as soon as I read it that this was talking about. They then talk about. I think he talks about. Did he talk about Neville Fern in here? But anyway, this is absolutely George Dring and Neville Fern. Yeah, there's Sergeant Dring. He does talk about something. But what he's done, and then I thought it was interesting. Another infographic just to do with day in the life, so you can see the kind of relentlessness of it when you're in action, of just how hard it is in 24 hours and what you were expected to do. I mean, 6 days of this and you're absolutely spent. So it's fun doing these sort of infographics and getting them put together, because these infographics work, don't they? They just lay it out on a plate exactly, so much clearer than kind of lots of words sometimes. And then we've got these maps. These are some of Stanley's maps. It's amazing, isn't it, to be able to see the actual maps he had, and on some of them he's got little pencil markings here. I mean, isn't that amazing? Which he would have been in his turret or wherever, and he's got marks there. This is boundary lines, the route they're taking, and stuff like that. It's absolutely incredible. And this is up on the kind of the big swan up through northern France. Again, another letter from Stanley here. So this is to Myrtle. Myrtle Kellett is the widow of Flash Kellett, who had been the commander of the Sherwood Rangers when they become mechanised in 1941, and he eventually gets killed in the early part of 1943, gets promoted up to brigade. And Myrtle was rather lovely, and Stanley developed a bit of a crush on her. I'm not going to lie. And then we get on to casualties. But when we get on to casualties, I just want to show you this, because this is Stan's service dress. Well, moving, isn't it, to see it? We still think of that old man who came and talked to us and seduced us all at Warfest back in September. And there's this thing, and he's got his SAS wings on the side there for his brief foray in the SAS. And there's my binos. Because everyone needs binos. This map here was done for this was actually painted by Stuart Hills. Is one of the guys who got through unscathed, amazingly. But again, I think it's a brilliant little map, isn't it? And then we go to the casualties, and the casualties is what I really, really wanted to hit home. And unfortunately, I took these photos of this letter, and literally I took these up at Carlton Barracks up in Nottingham. We just couldn't find it. I don't know what happened to it, but this is when Dennis Elmore dies on the 19th of April, and Dennis is Stuart's great friend, and Stuart's parents they're prisoners of the Japanese. Hasn't seen his father since 1937, hasn't seen his mother since 1939, I don't think, and he doesn't really know what's happened to them, and his friends are consequently that much more important to him. And Dennis was brilliant. He was an amazing sportsman. He was a scholar. He was absolutely Stuart's best friend. And this bit here, I remember reading this and just, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. And he says, "I loved him better than anyone else in the world, so I know just how you feel. And the bottom has been knocked out of my world." I mean, goodness, that's raw grief for you, isn't it? And just incredible to read this letter. I really was just in pieces doing that. And actually, when I was writing the book, right at the end, I knew I had this big scene coming. I didn't know how to do it to sort of just convey the kind of enormity of the loss that Stuart Hill's felt. And I found myself getting really, really upset writing it. I really did. It's about the most upset I've been while writing a book, was writing that and just reading that. And it's just so raw and real, isn't it? And you realize that these are not just sort of black and white figures from the past. These are real people who kind of loved, lived and breathed. And that's what we're trying to sort of get across, really, I suppose, in all this. And here's another letter from Bill Wharton. These are the telegrams that his wife received. And here's what Stan Perry had in his breast pocket when he was wounded the second time during Black Hawk. And you can still see the shrapnel marks. And the shrapnel went through this sort of leather wallet with pictures of his new wife in, and nestled against the edge of his heart. I mean, you can't imagine it, can you? It's just amazing. That's the telegram she got. I mean, it's quite something, really. So, and then Padre Skinner, this is a copy of his casualty book he kept with the little maps of where he buried everyone. And this is from the Burju battle. There you are, Lieutenant Galvin. We saw him in the tank at the beginning of the exhibition, and there he is. Unidentified burnt remains, broken and scattered in tank, completely burned up. Brewed up, yeah. No one known to have escaped, no personal effects. Yet, weirdly, years later, they found a cap badge. Because what happened was they bulldozed the tank off the road, which is why there's now the gap on the side of the road. And when they bulldozed it over, it rolled over and the cap badge fell out. And when they finally cleared away the tank, God knows whatever it was in the early 1980s or whatever it was, they found the cap badge. And that was one of those crew. Amazing. And here's his diary, which I'm very glad he transcribed, I have to say, because it's very, very difficult. You were complaining about my writing earlier on, Tony. I mean, have a go at that. I mean, jeepers. And this is a letter from George String. It's absolutely incredible. He goes, pleased to say, I'm going on fairly well. I've got my hand growing in my stomach now. They've put a flap out and sewn my hand in it, and I haven't lost it all. I have 2 fingers left that work, and one that doesn't. The rest that's shot away. They are trying to make like a web. So I may be able to grip a little with it. Still, it's finished my army life. And then we've got a few sort of artifacts from the end of the war. These tanks were made. One was presented to Skinner. One was presented to Stanley. We've managed to bring those together for the first time since the end of the war, which is a lovely thing to do. And this is rather remarkable. This is the message that was handed over to Stanley Christopherson on the evening of the 4th of May. And you see the last bit. So this is an old message book. And initially, when Stanley received it, he was a bit annoyed about it because he thought it was not very clear. But the reason he'd done it was because he'd written it down in he was such a kind of state of blue funk at the excitement that he just wrote it at the bottom of this already used page. And it says, no advance from present, no further harassing fire, no practical move without further orders. BBC News confirmed German army in front surrenders at 0800. Details of procedure will follow. Wow. And there's the quote that Stanley says, it meant the war in Europe was over. My first reaction was a feeling of profound relief, followed by indescribable exhilaration and finally a sorrowful longing for those special friends no longer with us, with whom I wish to share this moment. Written on the 5th of May. I mean, quite a thing. And then we kind of thought, well, we've got these 8 people. We want to know what happened to them all. So we One of them didn't make it, so his position is blank. Harry Heenan, he was killed. And here you've got the others. And there you've got a picture of Stan taken by Stuart Bertie at Warfest. And amazing to think that was taken on the 19th of September and he passed away on the 6th of October. You know, how lucky were we? And it means that link to those who were actually actually lived in the regiment and served and fought with the regiment. Oh, yeah, they're just slipping away. There's like 3 left now. You know, it's moving. It really is. It's profoundly moving, I think. And here they are. These are the officers that survived. So there's Stanley. There's Jack Coleman. There's Dick Coleman. Not many left. But that's it. So I hope you like it. Thank you to everyone. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you to the National Army Museum most of all.